No. So good evening, everybody. I'm Kari Quast with Northwest Neighborhood. Thanks for being here on St. Patrick's Day. I know that we could be other places, but we're here and that's great. I'm glad you're here. This is potentially our very last Zoom meeting for the pandemic as we know it. We've been doing something live on this since March of 2020. I think it started with a Facebook ramble from me, which then turned into organized meetings as we got used to this. And it's been valuable. I think I've seen people on Zoom that I have not seen in the classroom at Everett Community College. So both are good. But John Olson's on here tonight from Everett Community College. And about 3 weeks ago, he reached out and said that we are welcome back, which is very exciting. We missed the cookies. I think even Johnny may be here today. So we would like to be back in person. The mask mandate has been dropped, but I would defer to everybody's judgment as to their comfort for that meeting, being in person again, because inside is different than outside. And well, anyway, it's everybody's choice to make. I did want to show a picture. I'll just share my screen really fast of this wonderful group of humans who helped get the sign at Drew Nielsen Park last weekend done. So on the left, Tim, Jeff in the brown sweatshirt, me, and then Johnny Smith. This was a long time coming. Drew Nielsen, who's the park was named for, passed away in 2012. And the park had been known as the Northwest Neighborhood Park. It had kind of been a gathering place for the neighborhood. And so to honor him, there's a lot of neighbors who still very much remember Drew and wanted to keep his memory alive. And so we finally, through a matching grant last year, were able to purchase the signs. And then the wood, the neighborhood purchased. But it's sort of like we've tended this park and this is where we go and this is where we gather. And now the sign at the park looks like it should instead of very well glued on corkboard. Oh my God, we were using crowbars to get that stuff off. And it did yield and we prevailed and we got the beautiful cedar on there. So that should last us for a while. So go take a look at the park. On the one side, there's a description of Drew and his role here in Northwest and with the city being on city council, et cetera. And then on the other side is a description of Northwest neighborhood. So we're very proud of this and I'm very grateful to all of our neighbors who helped with that process. So there's that. Yay, Tim. I know Tim wrote the story about his friend. I don't know if Tim, if you want to say anything about the board or how that process went or what it feels like for you.
I'm still sore.
I would agree with that. It was like doing uppercuts with the crowbar to get the glued on corkboard off. And then there was a lot of, so I'm grateful for the group. It was a really fun day at the park. So thank you for that. So this evening, I don't have too many other announcements. We will be back at the college. It sounds like we're going to be back in the same room, White Horse 105, which is in the basement of the White Horse building. You can access it from the side, but we can park in lot E, which is the lot that is on 10th in front, which is great. We'll have signs up to get people to remember, but this way we don't have to replace our banners because we already have them made. So we'll probably be gathering at 6:30 instead of 6:45 and then out of there by 8. So that's all I have. I do want to introduce David Simpson. He's having a sip of coffee, our Port of Everett commissioner. And then also our special guest this evening is Nick Harper, who is the deputy mayor for the city of Everett. And Cassie could not be here. I don't know if you follow the Everett pages, but they've been in DC this week and he can explain why they were out there. So we're happy to have Nick here. He's a neighbor in Northwest neighborhood. And I'm going to pick on you for 1 second to say, I don't know if you've been to one of our meetings before. Certainly, maybe not when I've been chair.
And when did you become chair?
2017.
Yeah, no, I haven't been since, I have definitely not been since I've been in this role at the city. And I'm happy to admit that I went frequently in the late 2011, 12, 13 when I was serving in the legislature, but it's been a long time.
Okay, well, welcome to the neighborhood meeting. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Absolutely.
Rather than later.
I look forward to in-person meetings, so I'm happy to come next month when we can meet together.
Yeah, That's great. So without further ado, I turn it over to you. I'd personally like to know what a deputy mayor does relative to the mayor.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so Nick Harper, I recognize almost everyone, at least that has their camera on. So yeah, very happy to be here. I think John Sweeney and I were initiated at the Elks together a month and a half ago or so, the same night. So that was fun. And that was the first time I got to meet John. So the deputy mayor is just a title that Cassie chose, obviously not elected. I'm an appointed executive director. My counterpart currently would be Lori Cummings, who's been at the city for many years. Prior to this role, was serving as the city's parks director. When Cassie was elected in 2017, she formed a transition team. I had worked for previous executive administration in Seattle and was working for the Master Builders Association at the time, but asked that I serve on her transition committee. And anyway, through that process, went through a lot of different discussions about how one could form an executive office. Cassie is a very hands-on mayor, and so she really is, I mean, other than title, which obviously speaks for itself, the CEO of the city. But I think she felt strongly that having, whether you call us lieutenants or however you want to look at it, having two strong individuals that could manage both kind of the internal operations and the external functions of the city on a day-to-day basis were important. So we just reorganized the way the mayor's office had previously functioned. So initially it was Lyle Ryan, who served in that other executive director capacity. Lyle, lots happened in the last 4 years. In 2020, when the pandemic befell us, we, and I think you all are probably aware, certainly the Herald's covered it and Cassie has talked about it a lot over her first 4 years, but given some of the city's budget challenges, we've actually done two rounds of voluntary separation, the first in 2019, and then hadn't planned to, but with the pandemic and the need to further belt tighten, chose to do another round of voluntary separations in the spring of 2020. So Lyle was one of many city staff that chose to voluntarily separate and retire from the city. So we went from what was a mayor's office of 12 when I started at the city, and that was commensurate with what Mayor Stephenson had had in terms of FTEs in the mayor's office, to now we have just 5 full-time employees in the mayor's office. So fewer than 50% of what the previous staff had been. It's obviously Cassie, Lori Cummings, and myself, Nicole Weber, and then a woman named Bernice Delgado, who is our administrative support person. So yeah, my functions, Lori and I really work with every single department in the city, and we've kind of evolved over time in the last 4 years, I would say. Initially, Lyle and I split up departments as we viewed them as more external facing versus internal facing. I think we thought that quickly seemed a bit inefficient, in that Cassie's whole goal is for all departments to cross collaborate, kind of remove silos. So many things in the city aren't just public works specific or police department specific or economic development or community development specific or library specific, but touch so many different roles. So Lori and I really touch every department. Her history, background, expertise really is more internally focused. So what I think I bring to the role and to the office and to support for Cassie is just another lens of how we interact with the community, how we try to serve the community well. And so, yeah, I won't go through my day-to-day calendar, but those are the types of activities that I do to try to provide support to all of our department directors and city staff, and then of course the mayor. But the three of us work very exceptionally collaboratively together. Throughout the pandemic, we really have been coming into the office just because we viewed Microsoft Teams and Zoom as just an imperfect way to try to keep that collaboration going. And so it's been exciting now to be able to transition more of our management staff and line staff back to the office to work together.
So I guess on a question on that, Nick, how many how many city staff are back working in the buildings at this point, or percentage wise, maybe a guess?
Yeah, so it fluctuates on a day-to-day basis. All of the customer service facing employees are back. There are some functions that are by appointment, just to try to create an environment that both customers are more comfortable with, as well as some staff are more comfortable with. So permitting services, for instance. And yeah, most customers have enjoyed that, the predictability, rather than showing up and maybe having to wait in a queue or a line, knowing that you have a 10 o'clock spot that's available, that's set for you, and you can plan and be more efficient with your time. But I don't know the exact percentage, Kari, but I would say that, yeah, the bulk of our team members are at least in the office 3 to 4 days a week. I think, like most industries, there probably will be a reimagining of what telework can look like. So certainly I think there will be a little bit more flexibility and latitude long-term, like you see with most private companies and most public sector employees, that we will probably allow for or accommodate some level of flexibility going forward. But certainly where the public's concerned, we see it really important that we meet the people where they are. So if coming to the Everett Municipal Building or the police department or Cedar Street for permit related issues is important, then that's, I think, the way that we're trying to address that, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and please just use the Zoom buttons to raise your hands if people have questions as we go. Since Kari brought it up, I'll just mention this week. So the National League of Cities has a couple conferences annually. This is their spring conference in Washington, D.C., or it might be called their winter conference, but it feels like spring now since we've already sprung forward from a time perspective. So council members Fossey, Ryan, and Schwab, all three attended for the first time. And then Mayor Franklin went. There was also fortuitously this Mayor's Innovation Conference that overlapped, so she was able to participate in both. She did meet with the Pentagon early in the week to talk about the what was announced, I think, in the spring of last year, the home porting of the 12 new Constellation class frigates at Naval Station Everett. So that deployment will begin when the first ships are completed in 2026, but it will result in a higher number of sailors at the base, and certainly then their families as well in the community. So talking about infrastructure needs, both physical as well as, childcare, housing, all the things that come along with bringing several thousand new Navy women and men into our community. And she met with Boeing. Has had a lot of turnover in executive leadership. So she met with the new executive vice president of government relations at Boeing, as well as a number of representatives from the Department of Justice and the COPS office to talk about, some of the things we're doing, we think, innovatively around law enforcement, and also some of the new buckets of money that may be available, in particular around alternative response, trying to get more non-commissioned individuals, kind of like our COET community officers and enforcement team, outreach and enforcement team, sorry, to address, in particular people in mental health crisis or other types of things that might not necessarily need direct law enforcement intervention, but other types of intervention to be successful. So, and yeah, so I think all I've heard so far is it's been a very productive week. Our delegation members still are not taking in office meetings. I know Mayor Franklin was able to meet with Congressman Larson off campus to discuss some issues, in particular around the new infrastructure package that was passed and ways that the community could benefit from that. But the senators and representative aren't yet taking in office visits. So that wasn't something that they were able to do on this trip. John mentioned the pedestrian bridge. Yeah, very exciting. I've been talking about this for years, in particular when WSU, my first year in the legislature in 2011 was when WSU started to transition the management of what was then the University Center. Obviously, the building was built years later with the leadership of Representative Sells, Representative Dunshee at the time, But once a clear academic presence existed on the east side of Broadway, and with how busy that highway continues to be and will continue to grow for student safety and just connecting the two sides of our community, that bridge is a critical piece. So yeah, I think John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the transportation revenue bill that passed had $12.5 million associated with the bridge. That's for
12.5, 12.9, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So initially for design and engineering funds, but I don't know that gets us all the way to construction, but a significant step forward towards full build out, and there will probably be matching funds associated with that. So yeah, this was a huge leap to get that bridge designed, engineered, and then built. And yeah, it'll be a huge asset for the north end of the community and the college and just our academic community generally. So
Yeah, I drove to Marysville today and came back, and I thankfully went to Marysville before the traffic really kicks in. But once you pass 4 or 5 o'clock, it is solid. That the northbound lanes of Broadway are absolutely solid. You can't really even turn from 10th to get there. So I'm trying to imagine a pedestrian crossing to their library to go to the other side, and like you're just everyone's in a hurry and rush. They don't want to sit there.
No. Yeah, people have used it as a total alternative to the interstate.
Yeah.
I remember when the Broadway Bridge was replaced there by Angel of the Winds, everybody thought it was going to be terrible for downtown congestion. It actually was the best 2 years I think we've had, because people didn't divert from I-5 because they were afraid of what it would mean to not have that bridge access. But I did want to introduce, if she's still on, and she doesn't need an introduction, but Jennifer Gregerson, former mayor of the city of Mukilteo, who I'm sure most of you are familiar with or aware of. Mayor Franklin has retained Jennifer to do some community outreach. In 2018, after taking office, one of the outcomes of the transition team was to do kind of a robust listening session to the community. You know, how is Everett moving in the right direction? How is Everett moving in the wrong direction? What are our strengths and how do we build upon those? What are our weaknesses or deficiencies and how do we address and mitigate those? And so 4 years later now, it was really important to Cassie to try to do the same thing, but I think this time in a less, in a more organic way. And Jennifer was the perfect fit to be a community representative to get out and talk to individuals. So I wanted her to be here tonight. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your work, Jennifer, but many of you on the call are people who I would love for Jennifer to be able to connect with directly. So please, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've talked to at least a couple people already or have appointments scheduled. Nick did a great explanation of what I've been up to, and basically I'm doing kind of 15 to 30 minute one-on-one, mostly Zoom, just a couple in person, but mostly Zoom conversations about, you know, what you like about Everett and where the challenges are, and you know, issues, concerns, things like that. So yeah, I have, you know, living next to Everett, I thought I knew things about the city, but I know a lot more now. So it's actually been a really great project. And in a couple more weeks, I'll kind of start wrapping up these interviews and eventually put together a report of, you know, findings and what I've learned and what we know about, you know, and some of it's confirming things I know that the mayor knows well. And I think that there are some things that are maybe will be surprising. So yeah. So that's what I'm up to. And if I haven't already reached out, would love to, I'm on the calendar invites. If you got that, you have my email. You can always, Greg, snag me there. And I also have all your emails now, so I might be reaching out. So yeah, thanks for letting me jump in on that. Thanks.
But if Cassie were here, I think she would say, I mean, not only the level of respect she has for Jennifer and her ability to do this work well, but it really is the good, the bad, and the ugly, if I can say it just plainly. Like, we want to understand where have we succeeded, where have we failed, and just, in the circles that you exist within, where would you like to see more focus, less focus? Because that's the only way I feel like Cassie thinks, and we all believe we can do our jobs well, is if we really understand that. And it's hard to just get that from a coffee table conversation and kind of the one-offs that we all have the opportunity to do. So I think this work has been really helpful and hopefully will be, but please do reach out to either Jennifer directly or myself if you'd like to have a dialogue. Yeah.
Question, I guess, because Jennifer, you were on the police meeting that happened, feedback 3 weeks ago. I don't know, time. Has there been any report done from that? Did all those meetings get finished across the city?
Yeah, so at the same time I'm working on these conversations, the police are doing a study with a company called Matrix. And so they did a bunch of roundtable meetings, 3 or 4 community ones, one with some business owners and one another community meeting. But yeah, anyways, bunch of community meetings. They have finished those. I don't know what the time, Nick might know their timing, but I'm not sure what the timing is for their report. But yeah, so they finished that outreach. I think they might be doing an online survey as well. So I haven't seen anything, but they did finish those roundtables.
Yeah, I don't know the exact timeline for when they're supposed to be completed. This was a consultant study that the previous council had commissioned. And I know, as you're all aware, over 50% of our council changed on January 1st. I think that the work product hopefully will still be of value. The main impetus for it was around cost. Are we delivering police service in as cost-effective way as possible? And I think that was for many of the 2021 and previous council, that was one of, just given the context of the budget, that was one of the largest drivers for this work, but certainly the scope of work is broader than that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the big question.
Please.
Matching grants. Holly's not here, but I know she would have some words to say. Why were they cut from 2,000 to 1,000? And what is expected to be done with the other $19,000?
That's a great question. I wish I had a perfect answer for you. What I can tell you is, and I'm going to pull up an email, so I apologize that my eyes are going to wander to my other monitor while I'm trying to respond. We've made, in the voluntary separations, which have been extremely painful. I can't, and I'm not saying this to garner any empathy, but going from an office of 12 to an office of 5 is not easy. And, we lost people who, Paul Kaftansky, who I know you all knew, was an exceptional executive director with the city. We had a full-time government relations person. Those tasks haven't went away. They've fallen on us. So, and every department has not been immune to that. So when we were looking at what some might call budget dust, but looking at citywide, how can we reduce the budget in a way that feels somewhat equitable? A lot of care was taken to looking at every single function the city provides, one of which are these neighborhood support services. And I'm not going to get these numbers exactly right, but I did ask, because I think Nicole Weber told me this was likely a question. Going back to 2011, for instance, the Northwest neighborhood has taken on an annual basis $350 one year, $375 one year, $775 one year, $2,500 one year, $1,050, $400, $250, $3,600. And that's pretty consistent across the city. Most neighborhood groups very rarely spent the $2,000, and often they were spending at the 1,000 mark or less. So I think that ultimately, and I know if Cassie was here, she would certainly own it. She thought that this was an equitable and reasonable way to spread reductions across every city service in a way that she didn't see, given kind of that 10-year look back, was going to have a significant or meaningful impact on the work neighborhood groups were doing, giving on an average the amount of money on an annual basis that was being spent. So whether that's a great decision, a reasonable decision or a bad decision is certainly a question that everyone can have. I think reasonable people can disagree on that judgment, but that I think was the rationale, was looking across the city. Very few neighborhoods were taking advantage of the full $2,000 on an annual basis, and in most cases weren't even spending $1,000 on average. So I think the decision was made that when we're looking at libraries and we're looking at IT and we're looking at police and we're looking at parks, everybody had a little bit of skin in the game, and I think that was. But I mean, anyway, that's the best explanation I have to that question, Kari.
I will just retort with COVID has been very difficult, and I think in order for us to survive, we're very fortunate in Northwest that people contribute to our neighborhood and we have a good structure in place. So we are able to move forward. I'm not the only one asking this, I guess, too, right? When Chair of Bayside's reaching out saying, I'm scrambling now because I had lofty plans for 2022 with the hope that COVID's over so we can actually gather. It seems the opposite of we're coming into potentially more money coming into the city, more people are going out, more tax revenue, all of that, to then turn it down when actually probably people need to turn it up to get going again. Because part of the reason I stayed on chair 2 more years was because I couldn't just walk away. We've been at this for 32 years as Northwest neighborhood. So there's a lot of investment here. I was thinking about the signs, and I am so proud of us for getting those signs up. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and others when I say this. Last year, what we were able to accomplish was get the signs ordered. We weren't able to get them up, and that was $800 of our matching grant, which when I think of it, it's like, but isn't that a city responsibility to decorate the park or tell what the park is? And where I flip it is that the volunteers of the city, the community, is the one that's doing this work. And we're doing it as sort of second jobs. It's a privilege to volunteer. It's a lot of time and effort to volunteer. And if these people didn't stand up, when it comes to the balance on the matching grant, we're usually 4 times the amount of whatever we've taken in. And that's a benefit to our community and to the neighborhood. And I think we've been a shining light to the neighbors and other neighborhoods. So we're frustrated. And I think the council losing Wendy was a huge loss for the city. And I know many reasons for that. At the same time, each year I've been chair, all the support has been eked away. And I recognize that a city can't do everything. It's security and safety and these types of things. However, it is about building a community, which is Jennifer's job now to figure out what's going on. And to do that, supporting the neighborhoods or the community members who have vested their time, invested a lot of time and years into it, seems like the right thing to do. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it really is, I think, fine we can afford it. We can, but others can't. And they're trying to do really good work with limited resources. And it's hard to get off the ground when you don't have $1. Or $1,000 does not go very far these days. It just doesn't. So I don't know if anyone else from the neighborhood steering committee has anything to say about that, but anyway, thank you for listening.
Yeah, happy to hear other comments. I totally appreciate everything you're saying, Kari, and I'm glad Jennifer's on the line to hear it as well. We will certainly report back. And I'd love to hear from others. I think the silver lining is we usually do 3 to 5 budget amendments a year. So, everything is a constant conversation, right? That can be revisited.
Thank you. John, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I had a different question for him.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, you hear a lot about this federal infrastructure bill and the relief for the cities and states. How much is Everett going to get? And what are we going to use it for?
Yeah. So we received, we've received 50% of what will be our ARPA allocation, which was just slightly north of $20 million, 20 point, I can't remember, $3 or $6 million. The first million of that we spent in what were called Everett Forward grants that are going out to local businesses in the community that applied.
Yeah.
We spent another $450,000 that council approved to acquire more of these, if you've read about them, pallet shelters. We located the first 25 behind the Everett Gospel Mission. Another 20 are being deployed there right now as we speak. The electricity and everything is being put in. And I think the other 20 are hopefully going to be located at a location that would serve a specific population of women with children that are currently living unsheltered. The other, 18.5, $19 million has yet to be allocated. We've had 2 now briefings with council where we've talked about and tried to garner feedback around priorities, kind of at the 30,000 foot level of, housing and homelessness, public safety, economic development and recovery. So we're really trying to understand what our council, because ultimately the council will make decisions on how those dollars are allocated.
And neighborhood groups.
What's that?
And neighborhood groups.
Yeah, neighborhood groups too. I mean, at this point in time, the discussions have largely occurred at the council level, but I think that's a wonderful idea, John, is to bring our team through the neighborhoods and have a discussion. As $1,000 doesn't go very far on the neighborhood level.
Out of 10 million, what can you do,
Yeah, but yeah, it's all about priorities. And I think, the goal of Congress anyway was to see sweeping investment with these funds. And what that looks like, Snohomish County, by way of example, received $160 million. So what the city has received is a relatively small percentage comparative to that. So we've tried to very closely coordinate so that we're leveraging those funds as they're spent in our community rather than potentially duplicating efforts or, just being crosswise. We have until the end of 2024, December 31st of 2024, to obligate those monies. So there's still quite a bit of runway, almost 2 years to obligate them, and then they need to be spent by 2026. So those were the direct allocated ARPA COVID-related support funds that the city received. Outside of that, then the infrastructure bill you referenced, those dollars are all going to be put out to communities largely through different competitive processes. So for instance, right now there's a round of what they call the RAISE grant. And I won't get the acronym right, so I'm not going to try, but for that grant in particular, we have an application that is being prepared to design and engineer another bridge, but this one automobile and bicycle carrying to connect Everett to what has been colloquially referred to as the River Point property. It's a kind of a bulb on the Snohomish River near Highway 2 that Public Works bought from Kimberly Clark, I think in the 2008-ish timeframe. And it's about 65 acres of light industrial land that currently isn't really developable because there's just a single at-grade crossing across the BNSF line. So building a bridge there would open up another 65-ish acres of riverfront land that could be redeveloped for economic and other, city benefits. Beyond that, there's going to be other bridge dollars. We have several failing bridges, in particular along Mukilteo Boulevard, where we will apply for funds. And there will be a lot of other roads and non-pedestrian transportation projects. Most of those dollars will all ultimately fund through Washington State. So I guess, the punchline is the bill passed however many months ago now. There's still a lot of questions to be answered in terms of how those dollars are actually going to get to local governments to be utilized on the back end. So I don't have a specific, unfortunately, other than the RAISE grant, which is the only one that's actually gone out to a formal RF. I don't know how the rest of those dollars are going to be allocated, but we will have an opportunity to hopefully apply for and be successful in receiving many of them. Sorry, Patrick.
So Nick?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are limits on how the ARPA money can be spent, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
5
so that,
criteria, yeah,
yeah, I think that's something that people need to understand, is that it can't just be spent on anything.
right. And I'm sorry, I can't rattle them off the top of my head. I'd be happy to email everyone. It was part of my council presentation in November. But yeah, there's an infrastructure bucket that involves water quality and broadband, certainly direct economic COVID relief. Revenue loss is one. But yeah, I'm not going to remember, but there were 5 categories that were eligible COVID related expenditures. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, along those lines, thank you, Patrick. All federal dollars come with tremendous strings. So the procurement processes are challenging. The audit scrutiny is robust. So for a lot of small businesses, it is very difficult at times to be a subrecipient of federal dollars because they just don't have the capacity, the sophistication is the wrong word, but just the ability to manage appropriately how to report how those dollars are being utilized. So yeah, everything Congress did was wonderful, but it's not quite as colorful as just we have $20 million we can utilize to support the community. Other questions?
Well, I'd like to see that email list of buckets that they threw it into.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll send that to Kari and then she can obviously distribute it to the group however she'd like.
I've been a bug about the safety of our water supply given an earthquake, and I know that's a remote possibility, but
Yeah.
something that if we're going to have infrastructure funds available, that comes to mind.
Yeah. Since Port Commissioner Simpson's on, I will just make sure everyone recognizes how incredible the investments and development that the port's currently in the midst of and continues to promote, just how impactful that's going to be for our community and the region. So thank you, David.
Where are they going to put 28 frigates?
12.
12. Well, 12. Where are they going to put 12?
The way I understand it is that, with the way they are deployed, there will probably only ever be 6 to 8 on the pier at any given time, and the others will be out,
doing things
in action. Yeah, doing what frigates do. I'm not a Navy man, so I don't know the answer to that question. But yeah, but that's my understanding. There'll be 12 home ported here, but they will not all, they will never all be pier, at the pier simultaneously. So it's,
yeah.
But it does sound like it's a more substantial influx of sailors than would be typical, because with this new class, for whatever reason, their intention is to dual crew them. So and I'm going to make these numbers up, but if a frigate's crewed by 150 sailors, they'll actually have 300 stationed here so they can go through a crew rotation.
Yeah.
So it'll mean a lot more just Navy people in our community than would typically be the case.
So I have a question of a lighter note. Now that we're coming out of COVID, and we can kind of all sort of get back to some sort of normal, what are you as city staff looking most forward to, or what events are coming down that we should know about, that we might get excited about, or programs that you're going to try and do now that you kind of can?
It's a great question. So the State of the City is Thursday, March 31st. If you're not aware of that, it's at Angel the Winds Arena, and it will be in person. So it's, I think, in the morning, 9:30 is when I think the remarks are given. So you can go on Economic Alliance's website if you'd like more information. It's also going to be recorded and streamed for people who that's more convenient or comfortable for. This year, both Fisherman's Village Music Festival as well as the Cruising on Colby Festival were two beneficiaries of those Everett Forward grants I spoke of earlier. So I think as a result, in May, you're going to see two events that were already good community building events, but with, headlining acts that we probably haven't attracted to the community before, just because the nonprofit organizations had more funds available to attract a higher caliber of, not higher caliber is the wrong word, artists that will draw from a broader, regional sphere. So I think there are, and through the summer, I just think there's going to be a lot of, I don't know if you've, I think there's going to be a lot of great community events throughout the spring and summer that having the farmers market downtown, and I think the organic things that will continue to grow off of that as people are more comfortable to be together. I just see a lot of exciting opportunity for our downtown, for our waterfront, as I mentioned, with the port activities. You've probably seen either from the freeway or driving by that, we have cranes up and they finally have gone vertical with the central section of the riverfront development on the Snohomish River. So that first phase is under construction, which will be, I think, 400-ish apartments and several commercial spaces. So that riverfront is just going to continue to activate as well, which really are nice east-west bookends to our proud peninsula here.
Any other big apartment buildings or condo developments? The one that we've been working most frequently with right now has been Trent Development, that's been developing the former YMCA site downtown. There's just a number of issues with building in our downtown, given the topography and other things, but that's going well. I'm trying to think of we've 2020 and 21 were record-setting years from a residential permitting perspective in Everett, and I can't rattle the numbers off the top of my head, but we have more and continue to see more residential activity, both and primarily in the multifamily arena than this community ever has, which I think is only going to continue. And I personally, think is extremely exciting for us as a city to attract other economic opportunities. Yeah. How's the Rethink Housing coming along?
So we just completed a housing action plan that the council adopted, and we got a grant from the state to implement that plan. So I'm sure Yorick, our planning director, if you haven't met him, would be happy to come and speak to. I know he's kind of started to get around neighborhood groups. Has he already spoken to Northwest Neighborhood?
No.
Okay, well, I'll encourage, and I can make sure to connect the two of you, Kari, but Yorick is great. He previously was working on county council staff. Before that, he was at Puget Sound Regional Council, but an exceptionally bright person. And we're just starting our next comprehensive plan update. He and then Becky Abelman McCrary, who's our long-range planning manager, are the two leading that work. But I know they'd both be happy to come and speak to the neighborhood group at a future meeting here in the coming months to talk about how all the kind of housing work is coming together.
We definitely need more housing.
Yeah.
There's just not enough, and the prices are ridiculous unless you're selling. It's hard to move into town now.
I know. Yeah.
I believe there's also another condo going in at 26 in Colby, the Colby Tower.
I hope so. Yeah. We keep seeing marketing material around it, but I haven't seen a hard application yet come in.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, but I know it would be an exceptionally exciting project if they can get it off the ground. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's good to know.
I will plug the Everett Farmers Market for just a moment. I know they're looking for an assistant manager, so I'm helping Gary right now. If you know anyone who would like to manage a farmers market, probably one of the best in the county, I'd say. Right, done. This is a quiet group. There's usually more questions. Tim, you must have a question. Jackie.
Liz is looking for
Carrie, this is Commissioner Simpson. I just wanted to pass on to Nick and to the city and to the college. We're all in this together as we move through this pandemic, and even with Jennifer moving into the city structure, she knows that she's still involved in what we do. And for economic development that's taking place between all of us, we're all helping each other. And as we move forward, and you can thank Mayor Franklin and the city council members that are in Washington D.C. right now, meeting with the legislators as much as they can. They share how important it is for our community to be back home, to be thought of when they're on the floor talking about money to give to our area. And Senator Pat Murray and Senator Cantwell and Rick Lawson and others that is on the Hill have never forgot their neighborhood. So with the things that are going on right now, we should be proud of the development that all of us have been involved in economic development, and especially providing jobs at this time. So that's it.
Indeed. John?
Well, I'm particularly interested in development along Broadway as part of Rethink Housing or the zoning be done. What's the outlook for development for higher either housing or commercial along Broadway?
I'll make a note, John, for that to be something that Yorick and his team cover when they speak to the group. Anything I would say is speculation. What I'll say just anecdotally is one of the largest challenges with Broadway is just kind of all the disparate ownership. You have a lot of small lots, right? And so to assimilate them to a point where you can scale a large project is just a tough thing, just with the historic ownership along that corridor, at least from I-5 and 41st to the college. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Obviously, there's been
I was just wondering if there were any projects in the works that you knew about.
Not that I'm specifically aware of. Mainly the projects we've gotten have been along Evergreen Way, downtown. One thing I'm encouraged by is we've had a huge uptick in townhome and kind of infill single family or that kind of mid-rise development, which I think is something we're sorely lacking. In particular, just the opportunities that theoretically could create for home ownership at a more affordable scale. 10 years ago when I was working or 6 years ago, I guess, at the Master Builders, I would talk to townhouse builders and why aren't you doing more of this in Everett? And the economics just weren't there. They were all building on the east side of King County and Seattle and elsewhere. So just a short 5-6 years later, it does seem like the economics have turned and there is now a lot more interest in doing some of that kind of, I think everybody calls it missing middle, but just that smaller single family product that could get people into more affordable pathways to home ownership.
I'm seeing a lot of that in Marysville. So I'm just wondering if there's any way we can get that going here.
On the ADU thing, the whatever dwelling units, that just passed at legislature to be something different, right? That it was an easier threshold that people can have these or something.
I think so. I haven't looked at, I don't know if Jennifer is familiar with it, with your role in the.
I don't think the ADU bill passed.
I think you're right.
But I think Everett actually already has a decent, I think their regulations are not too bad.
We do allow
if you're looking at more of them. If you don't like them, maybe it's not great, but
Seattle adopted about 2 years ago a detached accessory dwelling unit, DADU. I hate saying the acronyms because I feel like a wonk, but a detached accessory dwelling unit ordinance, creating a lot more flexibility. And it literally, our neighborhood is kind of the prime example where you have structured alleys and a grid network where you do have large lots. If one were so inclined to give up their backyard, build something, you could condominiumize the air rights and sell it at a more affordable price than obviously your lot and home would sell for on its own. And not that it's happening affordably in Seattle, but relative to other home prices, it is dramatically more affordable. And I think you'd see that even, further here in Everett. So that's something that I just requested and received
the model ordinance that Seattle passed. So something that we ought to consider. I'm sure it won't be without controversy, because anytime you do anything different in a single family neighborhood than what currently is the case, some people don't think it's a wise decision, but those are the kind of creative options I think that is, in particular, again, on the home ownership side, that I think could be beneficial to people looking at Everett as a, you know, more affordable option than a number of the other metropolitan communities in our region.
Yeah, I guess the old school name is mother-in-laws, but I think that a lot of people are trying to take care of their families and they need more
Totally.
space.
Yeah.
And if that was attached or allowed on their property, it just makes it easier for everybody to care for the people they love. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah.
I've seen 2 or 3 of those in Northwest in my walking, tromping around the neighborhood, but not many.
Yeah.
You are a tromper, John, for sure.
I beat the streets.
Other questions? Puppies need walk, green beer needs drunk. Nah, who wants to do that? It's terrible. Yeah. Treasurer's report. Russ, are you still here? Money man Russ. He's there, but does he? Anyway, I think we have money in the bank. I'm going to go with that. It's my intent when I'm no longer chair, and I mentioned that I was going to go over the slate. I think Holly's put her name in for chair. I think Shelley for vice chair or secretary or something. Russ, as long as he's in the neighborhood, will be treasurer, but I will be his intern at some point, so I can take that over someday because I know what we do, but I don't want to be chair anymore. Had a great run, but it's a lot of work, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I will be turning over the reins at the April meeting, so there's that. So yeah, you keep using Zoom because we have a year subscription till next April probably. For any purpose, but I look forward to being at the college, John, and being back in the room with everybody and seeing smiling faces again, because I can picture the front row, and we've already lost a couple members of our front row during the pandemic, not because of COVID, but just because. Yeah, we need to be back together, and I think that's going to be important. So, anything else for the greater good?
Just thank you all for having me. Tim, I don't think I get to say hello directly, but I see you walking the kids to school, so great to see you, Tim.
Thank you.
I just want to mention that Nick is always available for people. Not that I'm going to throw your cell phone out there, but
No, it's okay. I'll put it in the, yeah. Go ahead, Liz.
I am impressed that you seem to make time for everyone. You must be busy.
I just put my work mobile in the chat, so please, anyone that would like, yeah, no, I mean, it's very nice of you to say, Liz, but I absolutely would welcome direct calls from any of you anytime. I take this job seriously, and you know, my wife and I chose to raise our kids here for a deliberate purpose, and so I want to help make this community as strong as we can. And yeah, let's follow up, Kari, so I can make sure to work with you on, even if you're not chair, just looking at your calendar, when it would be best to get our planning folks back in front of the group.
May or June would be fine. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Thursday. Yeah, that would be excellent. I think. I'm not just like everybody. No one leaves Northwest if they don't have to. I will still be around. Yeah. So don't hesitate to reach out or see me in my garden.
Perfect.
No, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to everybody else who came this evening. And I will make sure we're all good with John for next month, but we should be back in Whitehorse 105 in the basement about 6:30 on Thursday, April, what would that be, the 21st. So we'll see you then.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're gonna have to give somebody a briefing on all the technology you use.
That's probably true, but there's a lot of us that know how to do this now.
Yeah, okay.
Take care, everybody. See you
All right.
later.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.